Hi everyone. So earlier this week I made this birthday card using a bunch of new Lawn Fawn products and some Copic markers to make a birthday card with a Copic colored Scenic background. And it got a lot of attention on Instagram, so I thought that I would come over here on YouTube and show you how I made the card. So here I'm just showing you the different Lawn Fawn products that I used. I used the new Village Shops Coaster Critters and Stitch Scallop rectangle frames, as well as a previously released stitch backdrop in landscape, and that's what you see here. To start, we're going to take 2 pieces of paper, cut it 5.5 by 4.25, and we're going to cut the stitch backdrop die into 1. Then we're going to lay that backdrop onto the other piece of paper, and then just with a very light colored marker trace the opening. Because this is where our background is going to have to start. So to do so, we're going to draw a bunch of trees using Copic markers in Y13 to start. And to do that, I'm just taking the marker and I'm just kind of dragging it across the page in squiggly lines on a zigzag, starting from the top, very, very narrow, and then just working my way down. And I want to leave some white space in between because we're going to go back and fill that in with some other colors to give the trees some dimension and depth. We're going to do 2 rows of trees. This is the first row, the row that's in front, so these are going to be a little bit darker than the ones we ultimately put in the back. You can draw in your trees however you like. I like to have them in varying sizes just so that it looks, you know, it looks more realistic, but you can do it however you like. You just want to make sure they're going up and down, vertically, vertically, so that they don't look like they're leaning or anything. Okay, now we're going to take our mid-tone green. So for the trees in the front row, we're going to use a light green, a mid-tone green, and a dark green. And with the mid-tone green, this one is YG17, but you can use any green scheme that you like as long as you have light, mid, and dark. And we're just going to fill in some of the white space with this mid-tone, and we're going to just do it in like little squiggly lines. Some of them are only going to, you know, they're going to kind of be broken lines. They're not going to be as perfect and straight across as the first set of lines that we did because we're adding some shadows in, and we just kind of want it to look, you know, a little bit broken up and shadowy, like the way that it would look in life. Okay, so now we're going to add our third color, our dark tone. The one I'm using is G17. And for this, you want to be very, very sparse. So you really only want to add the color on top of some of the mid-tone branches. So, because this is really going to be the shadow on the tree. So you just want to go with a very, very light hand, just almost not really dotting it, but just like little tiny flecks with a much lighter hand than you did for the other 2 tones that we added. And then I'm just going to do that and go all across the page. And if you find that you know, you went too light and you want your trees darker, you can always go back and add some more lines. So that's why I like to start light, because I can always go darker, but it's harder to go backwards. Okay, so now we're going to add our second row of trees, which are behind this first row. And because they're further away, they're going to be lighter. So we're going to use some lighter green. So for this, I'm just going to use 2 tones. I'm going to use YG17 to start, and I'm going to do that same motion that I did with the first row of trees, which is basically zigzag motion, back and forth with a shaky hand kind of, and then I'm going to do the mid-tone color, the YG13, the same way I did the mid-tone on the front row of trees, which is trying to fill in some of the white space, you know, being very sparse with where I add the color, because I can always go back. Okay, so now we have our 2 rows of trees. Now it's time to add the sky. And I wanted there to be like a little bit of a setting sun, or a sun that's just about to start to set behind the trees. So I used a YG00, and I just kind of had that, I just added that peeking between the trees. And then for the sky itself, I'm going to use a bunch of BGs and Bs. So I started with BG000, and then I wanted some striation of color in the background. So I like to use purples for that. So I used B60, which is a purplish shade. And now I'm just kind of going back and forth with my different BG markers and BG000, 0000. Did I say that? Well, one with 3 zeros, one with 4 zeros. And then I'm just going to use my B60 and my B63 to add in the purple. And there's no right way to do this. You just kind of add the stripes wherever you feel it's right, and then you just kind of keep going over them with other colors that blend well together until you feel like you have a nice afternoon sky, or maybe you want a morning sky, whatever kind of sky you like. And here I've reached a point where I'm happy. I added some BG01 at the end, and I really like the way that it darkened up the sky. Okay, now we're done with the backdrop. Now we're going to do the front backdrop. And we're going to take out that stitched portrait die, and we're going to start drawing in the road. And to do that, we're going to follow the natural curve in the die itself, and we're just going to add a line that goes across the page. It's maybe about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch thick, and just use whatever gray markers you have. And just the principle is the middle is going to be lighter, and the edges from right to left are going to be darker, as well as the edges running horizontally to each other, like the sides of the road. And you just kind of keep going until you get a blend you're happy with. And if it turns out just looking uniform one color, it's all right. We're going to add some more detail later. Okay, now we're going to add in a little hill behind the road. And to do this, I'm using G03 and G07, with the G07 being focused towards the ends, and so that the middle of the hill is lightest. Now we're going to add our bottom row of grass, and to do that I'm going to use G12, G14, and G16. So G12 is going to be the base, that's the lightest color. G16 is going to be the color that we're using right now. That is going to be our darkest, and it's going to be focused on the edges. And then we're going to use G14, the midtone, to blend it all together. So that again, we have some lightness in the middle to, give it some depth and realism. Now we're going to draw in a row of grass, and I have to make this grass pretty high because the stitch border is going to cover up a lot of it. And to do this, just use several different green colors that you like that are a little bit darker than the hill that you drew in front of it, and just go in flicking motions on an angle a little bit across the page with different colors until you kind of get a pattern that you like. For the road, to make the road realistic, we're going to draw in the little white lines using a gel pen, and I'm going to go over this again just to make sure that the lines are nice and dark, because sometimes when you use a gel pen over a dark color, it can bleed in, and the white line could have ended up looking gray if I didn't go over it a second time. All right, now we have our pretty Copic colored scenic background colored in. Now we're gonna work on the rest of the card, and we're gonna add the sentiment. We're gonna put the sentiment on acetate on the front panel of the card. And to do that, I'm just showing you how I line that up, which is by putting down the stitch backdrop frame, putting the sentiment inside there so that I know that it's going to fit exactly where I want in the frame. I used some StazOn black ink. I didn't like the color that I got, so then I went over it with black VersaFine ink. Was much happier with how it darkened it up, and then I used clear embossing powder over that and was very careful to heat set it so that I didn't cause the plastic to bubble, and I wiped off the the excess embossing powder before I did that. So then I just added the acetate to the front of the panel, and now it's time to add all our little images to the scene to make the scene come alive. And this is going to be a birthday scene, and it's going to say happy birthday, or it's your birthday, let's go out. So I wanted it to appear like it was a very, very vibrant, lively town in the background. So there's an amusement park that's going in full swing. There are people riding, you know, the roller coaster, and then in front of that there are some village shops where people can go shopping. There's an ice cream truck that's playing music on the road, so that, you know, that part of the town is alive. And then in the very front is the little storefront with our main character in front of it, which is a little lady squirrel, and she's holding her purse and she's standing next to a sign that says let's go out. And so I just thought that would be cute. It's just, everything is alive and fun, and I don't know, I kind of like that in my cards. So one thing I want to point out is that in the Lawn Fawn Coaster Critters and Village Shops set, they have different sized images, and I use that to my advantage. So for example, for the roller coaster, the cars, they have two different size cars. There's a big car and then a little car. I use the little cars here because I want, because the roller coaster is in the distance. So you need to be cognizant when you're doing a scene card that has different layers and different distances involved, to make sure that the images kind of fit where the image is distance-wise. So I use the smaller images on the very, very back, like the little cars, and then I use the little shops on the middle part of the card, and then the larger images are right up front. So the squirrel's kind of big, that little coffee shop is kind of big, and then this way your scene will have the proper depth and dimension, so that the larger images are in the front and the smaller ones are in the back. So it'll make it look more realistic. Although, I mean, I don't know what's so realistic about a little squirrel with a purse asking you to go out for your birthday, but you know, whatever. All right, so now we're gonna finish up the card. I just put it onto a card base. We're gonna add some glossy accents over most everything, just because I really wanted this scene to be like alive and vibrant and dimensional. So I'm basically putting glossy accents on everything except for the light purple paint on the car, and then the bodies of the houses themselves and the squirrel. Everything else, including all the windows on the shops, all of the little overhanging, I don't know what they're called, the overhangs on the shops, those are all going to be colored in with glossy accents. The bench, the ice cream on the ice cream truck, the musical notes, all that. So here's the card. I hope you like it. I hope you give it a try. It maybe took me about an hour and a half to make, but it was really worth it. It was a joy to do, and I think anyone that you give this card to would really love it. All right, have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you soon with another video.